The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's better than indoor plumbing. It's better than electricity. It's better than the thermos bottle. That's right. It's the 2017 Matt Talk Online Digital Fan Guide Division I preview, simply calling it The Guide. Over 200 pages digitally delivered to you March 14th. Pre-sale, pre-orders available now. MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide17. Listening to this show, you will get $5 off if you use the offer code PODCAST. That's PODCAST. Offer code when you buy it at MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide17. Over 200 pages of facts, stats, history. Every single wrestler competing in St. Louis, every single score all season long. History, 4-time All-Americans, 3-time national champions. Who's got the most All-Americans all time? Which coach has the most titles? How do they rank top 10? Everything in this guide, digitally delivered, optimized for your tablet and iPad, but it works just fine on your computer. And if you feel like going to Kinko's, you can print it out. It's going to be a lot of paper. But anyway, retailing at $19.99. You listen to this show, and any show on the Matt Talk Podcast Network with regularity, use the promo code, I'm going to say it really lightly now, podcast. Yep, use podcast. That way I know you're listening. You'll save $5. It is worth it. ESPN loves it. You've heard my sound bites on other shows about how much Adam Amin used this thing when he was with ESPN. I'm going to stop belaboring the point right now, and we'll get to our show. But MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide17, the guide. This thing, the most unbelievable Division I preview guide ever assembled, and it just keeps getting better every year. You'll want it for your fantasy contests. You'll want it for your knowledge bombs. You'll want it sitting there in the arena going, okay, hey, who's this guy? Boom, there he goes. Also got tweet your direct social media stuff right to it. It's an interactive guide. You'll be able to pop up a podcast that's related to who's going on and what's going on. You'll want to get this. MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide17, promo code podcast. Save yourself $5. You will not regret it.
You've always got time for short time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Now up on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, going to talk to one of the deans of college wrestling out at Rider University, Gary Taylor, finishing up his 39th year at the helm of the Bronx, just past Jay Robinson as the third winningest all-time coach in Division I history. First of all, before we can talk about your illustrious career, Coach Taylor, welcome to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
Thank you very much, Jason. I appreciate you having me on.
So 39 years. There are not too many coaches that hang around that long. I mean, we've seen Ned McGinley up at Kings in Division III. He's retiring after I think 47 years. Bucky Maughan was at North Dakota State for that long. Steve Eldridge was up at Coast Guard for that long. But what has been kind of, before we even get into your background, what has been the key to your longevity at Rider University?
Well, genetics is the key to anybody's longevity, and fortunately. I still work out. I'm still pretty healthy overall. Haven't had any major problems or setbacks. So, I think genetics certainly has a whole lot to do with it. Passion has a whole lot to do with it. Drive, all of those things. And this is what I do.
And it's been you've had one head coaching job in your entire career, and it's been at Rider. Started in 1978. Let's just talk about a little bit how that opportunity opened up for Rider University back then.
Okay, I was with Athletes in Action prior to taking the job at Rider, and I was with John Peterson was our head coach, and he also competed on the East team of Athletes in Action. And at that time, Athletes in Action wrestled both internationally and a lot of the top colleges and universities in the country. It was a branch of Campus Crusade for Christ, and I there's still some things going on with Athletes in Action, but there's not a wrestling team per se. Like there used to be. Gene Davis was the coach of the wrestling team at that time. So coming out of that, after a couple of years, I was up at East Stroudsburg. Red Whitman was a great coach at East Stroudsburg, and I worked with him as a student assistant and learned a lot from Red as well. And Red had mentioned, hey, would you be interested at all? Rider University, Rider College at that time, had just let me know that there's a job coming open because Barry Burtonette, the founder, was going to switch to full-time trainer. He said, would you be interested? And I said, yes, absolutely. I applied. It never hurts to have an Olympic gold medalist make a call for you. And that's how it all started in 78, 79 season. They hired me for that season, and I've been here ever since.
What do you remember about the college wrestling landscape back then? Not necessarily nationally, but right there in New Jersey, there were a lot of teams. I mean, this is really, we hadn't seen a ton of cuts, but there were a lot more teams available. But what was it like recruiting and basically hitting the ground running at Rider?
Well, what you have to remember is that Division III, Division II, and Division I all competed at the same tournament after their own tournaments. It was, and many of, Dave Eisenhower was at the college in New Jersey. Montclair was very strong at that time. So right in the immediate neighborhood, with Trenton State, then now College of New Jersey, and Montclair, and you had Glassboro. You had a lot of, and of course you also had Princeton, Division I. You had Rutgers Division I. So, there was a lot of competition. I'm originally from Western PA, so I did a lot of recruiting both in Pennsylvania and New Jersey when I first started, and that's held true pretty much throughout my career. I've never really, I've always split that. Now we've broadened out a little bit. We get some kids from Ohio sometimes. We had a kid from Wisconsin, but it's been primarily, the two states between Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and then New York. We were able to successfully, get someone in like John Carvalera, who's a two-time All-American for us. So that's kind of the landscape at that time. A whole lot more colleges and universities had wrestling.
In terms of the recruiting aspect, you said you'd recruited Western Pennsylvania, and you point out that TC&J and Montclair, really, they did have guys that would go on through the Division III into the Division Is. But when did you feel like you really started to hit your stride and bringing in the right type of kids that you felt could bring national awareness and national prominence to Rider University Wrestling?
Jason, when I got here, there was never a nationally ranked wrestler. There was never a nationally ranked team at Rider, and there never was an All-American. So, I knew, having been, on the team that I was, we were in, most of the major rooms in the country. So I knew talent, and I knew wrestling, and, I've been fortunate to both high school and college have great college coaches that are in the Hall of Fame, with Bob Bubb and Neil Turner at Clarion were my coaches. And then I also, my high school coach, Dave Clellan, Hall of Fame in Pennsylvania. So I had very good coaching. Of course, spending 2 years with John Peterson was tremendous experience, along with many, many other great wrestlers on that team. So I knew I was ready and prepared. And fortunately, Barry Burtonette had recruited the DiSerafino brothers, Lou and Rob. And that was the first piece of the puzzle. And that was because I looked at Lou DiSerafino, and Robbie was tough too. They were both tough. But Lou, I could tell, this kid's one of the best in the nation, but he doesn't have a clue that he is. So that was my hard part, getting him, to understand just how good he really could be. My second year here, we had our first All-American. He placed third in the nation. And that was the breakthrough to say, and we placed 18th in the nation. So we accomplished two things. We had our first All-American, and we finished in the NCAA tournament 18th in the nation. They had to make a card for us because they never had imagined, the place of Ryder would be on the board, but it was. And then that was where my Western connections came next, because the Morrison brothers were the next piece of the puzzle. And of course, Tim Morrison went on to place 5th in the nation, and he was the second All-American. And then that was when it really started to break. But I had told people when I got here, they said, what do you plan to do? I said, bring Eastern and national recognition to Ryder. And you could have heard a pin drop, at the press conference that amounted to 2 people. And they said, well, how can you say that? You've never. I said, well, you're thinking of it as a goal. I'm telling you that it's going to happen. That's just how I think. I'm not saying it, something magical. That's just, if you're not thinking that way and you're taking a Division I job, then, I believed it was going to happen. And, fortunately, it did happen. And then, there's been, 15 All-Americans, since I've been here at a small university, and we've beaten some major programs in the country. And no, we're not going to beat them every year, and it's tough to do in a small program. But we've had some great wins over, some very big teams over the years and tournaments and so on and so forth. So that's kind of when I realized it could happen. Other people started to realize it. No longer could anyone say, well, you can't, you don't go to Ryder. You can't be an All-American. Lou shattered that in my second year. He went from never placing in a high school state tournament to being 3rd in the nation literally in 2 years.
As we look at the development of wrestlers, 15 All-Americans, some people will look at this and try to say, oh, well, you've only produced 15 All-Americans in 39 years. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at the demographic of Ryder, the size of Ryder, the location of Ryder, do you think that, do you think 15 is a low number for your goal, or do you think 15 is a high number? I mean, where do you see your individual coaching performance with the 39 years, the 14 conference titles, and the 15 All-Americans?
That's a hard question to answer, Jason, because we have had many, many other kids that were in the round of 12. They needed to win one more match, and we'd be talking about a whole lot more. I think what you have to do in terms of small programs, and I mean, I've done this a long time, so I can go way back, and I can look at the Clarions when Bob and Neil Turner did an incredible job and had 3 champions in 1 year. It's hard for smaller programs. We have 3,000 students. We're up against people with 30 to 40,000 students in some of these programs, some of which we've beaten in duels and some of which we've placed ahead of in tournaments. So I don't think it's just the 15 All-Americans. I think that certainly says that it's a program that every 3 years we have an All-American. Now, if you will, we haven't been in existence as long as Rutgers or Princeton. We have more All-Americans than both of them. And I think that you have to look in things in context of where you're at and like you had mentioned, demographics and so on. So for a small school like Ryder that doesn't have the facilities and doesn't have, as much finance, I think 15 All-Americans is good. I would have liked to have had a lot more. As I said, we had many, and I could, get into that, but I won't, who made the round of 12. So we've been close. We've been competitive at nationals for the time that I've been here.
And you look at the relationships that you have over the years. You had mentioned Tim Morrison, and I mean, what does it mean for you as a coach to have a guy wrestle for you, be an All-American, but sends all of his kids to wrestle for you as well?
Well, that's just a tremendous honor. It really is. That he had faith, in us and the program, and entrusted us, with his boys, and all of them were strong competitors as well. So it means a lot to me personally, is what it means.
I mean, there was a run there. There was a Morrison in your lineup for about a decade and a half, it seemed.
That's probably accurate. And it was pretty neat and they're all really good kids too. And, graduated with high honors and so on and so forth. And competed very hard for Ryder. So I'm proud of all of them. I'm proud of, Tim and Tanya for entrusting us with their sons.
When you look at how the world of college wrestling is, and Ryder's been a situation where they've moved conferences a couple times. There's the East Coast, then to the CAA when there was a merger there, now to the EWL. What do you learn from other coaches that you've carried along with you over the years from these relationships in the East Coast and then in the CAA and then to the EWL?
Yeah, well, you learn a lot. I mean, there's tremendous coaches throughout the country, and by being around, the only one that you left out there was the ECWA, was second after the ECC, before the CAA, before the EWL. And, you had Boston, some of it has changed, but, you learn an awful lot from great coaches, and, it's, you pay attention, you watch, you see how they treat kids. I know that you'll get to it, but you take a person not even in our conference. I learned a lot from coaches, throughout the nation. Had J-Rob not stepped down last year, I wouldn't have caught him. It's just that simple. I consider him one of the greatest coaches ever in college wrestling. I mean, he had, over the last 16 years, more All-Americans, and he went to a place that didn't have national championship teams and developed that. So I watched him. I go back with Jay all the way to Iowa, where he was, I believe, 9 years with Gable. So I have a tremendous resource of learning and watching great coaches that I've been in conferences with, but also throughout the nation that I talk to, I learn from, and always have.
Going back to when you said you were going to bring Eastern and national recognition to Ryder, as you said, then Ryder College, now Ryder University, what did the administration do to help you with that? And what's the administration been like to know that you're a team that's consistently putting out All-Americans at the highest level of Division I, and a very, the gym you guys compete in is pretty small, even when in the MAC, the MAAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, where all sports compete. I mean, if Ryder makes a tournament in baseball or basketball, yeah, it's a big deal. You guys have been on the national level for wrestling for a long time. What's the administrative support been like, and what have they been able to do to help you elevate the wrestling program?
Well, that comes in two phases, but the main thing, they have done everything that they can do. Again, I think coaches at a smaller university, they have to realize the limits of the school and the funds, that are available first and foremost on the academic end and then on the athletic end. So, Ryder has always been supportive at the administrative level. And the other thing that I would say that they've done is that when we did have a success, they recognized the success and they did a good job of getting it out media-wise and so on. And one of the main things that happened at Ryder that doesn't happen everywhere, they never did anything to hold me back. And by that, sometimes, when you have success, we all know that, we don't have football, but basketball and so on, those are the big sports at all schools. And, so I built a good relationship with my administration. I'm probably on my fourth president here and probably eighth vice president. So, in building that relationship, they were very supportive within the limitations of what they had, which was fine. We don't have the biggest wrestling room. We don't have the biggest, auditorium or gymnasium, to compete in, but they do the best that they can. And that's all I ever asked them for. I said I would do the rest, and I believed where we were going, and so on. So I appreciate the support that all of the administration has done throughout my 39 years. As I said, it's been, different presidents and vice presidents.
One guy that seems to have been there with you the whole time, he recently retired after 35 years in sports information, Bud Fote. He's been there. I mean, he coordinated the CAA rankings. He's, helped run tournaments, and just, a guy that kind of has to do everything. And the relationship with the sports information director sometimes is a super important thing for wrestling coaches, because that's usually your only pipeline out to the media. What did Bud mean to the program? What did Bud mean to you in terms of being a wrestling coach to get the word out about your program?
Well, first of all, Bud's just a great human being, and he's a great man. He's quality, and he was being pulled on, from anywhere from 16, we're up to 20 teams now, and and always went the extra mile for everyone. So he means a whole lot to me. I miss him, when you go through that many situations, when you have kids in what used to be the East West or now the All-Star meet and so on and so forth, and you've got an SID that really, really recognizes it and gets everything out. And like you said, he actually did all the rankings, for two different conferences that I've been in. Just a tireless, worker. He really, really has a tremendous work ethic. I've got great respect for him, and I wish him well in his retirement. And
one of the early stories, and you had obviously been coaching a long, long time before I even got into the sport of wrestling, but when Ryder came to the Colonial with the merger from the East, the ECWA, and then the CAA brought in Hofstra and Drexel and Boston University into the existing CAA teams with Old Dominion, George Mason, then James Madison, and a couple others, we were sitting at a seating meeting at the Beast of the East. It was during the college tournament, the short couple years they had the college tournament, and they asked me to run the seating meeting. I'm like, okay, fine. And I go in there, and then all of a sudden, the coach from Ryder, Gary Taylor, is sitting there every single weight class. You had something, and it wasn't even always about your guy. No, well, we got him. One, you're a seating director's dream, and you're a seating director's nightmare all in the same time. What is it about the being able to accumulate so much knowledge and just recall it so well that in those situations, like, okay, well, Gary, what happened there? They're looking to you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. I always tried to be fair, in seating meetings. And if someone beat our kid or someone beat the kid that beat our kid, I would bring those kinds of things up, because that's what you're trying to do in a seating meeting. You're trying to really be fair to the people that deserve to be seated in the rank order that they should. Fortunately, I have a photographic memory when it comes to wrestling. Not everything, but when it comes to wrestling, I do remember a lot, and I do a lot of studying, to prepare for seating meetings, and that's something that I've always taken serious, because the one thing I like about wrestling, for the most part, it's fair, and if everybody's given a fair shake, then whatever the results are, they are. And I think all wrestling coaches, that's all they're looking for, is just everybody treat each other's kids fair, and wherever it breaks out, it breaks out.
We look at those relationships. We talked about the coaching relationships earlier, and when those teams came in, that was really when I got to know Carl Adams and Jack Childs and yourself, and like you three, for example, really anchored that East Coast Conference, and then wrestling in the East and the Northeast for a long time. What did it mean to coach with guys like Jack Childs and Carl Adams?
Both quality men, both quality coaches. Learned a lot from both of them. Carl and Jack, had run quality programs, before I came and really began to understand, what some of the behind the scene intricacies of wrestling and administrating and working with administrations and so on. I mean, when I took the job, at Ryder, I wasn't much older than, the guys that I was coaching. So I knew wrestling, but, there's so much that particularly a head coach has to understand. And, you learn things like, you better get to know your administration. You better spend time making sure that they know who you are and get on some committees and things like that. And, I always, picked both Jack and Carl's brains on those kinds of things because I trusted them. They were good coaches and they were good with their kids and all of that. So, those two guys do stick out for me as well.
The school's already made the announcement that once you announced that you were going to retire, that John Hanji was going to take over the program, and he was an All-American for you in 1993, finishing fourth, and has been a mainstay there. Always dresses well, his hair's always perfect. But what did you see when you recruited John to Ryder, and what's made him such a mainstay in the program with you all these years?
What I saw in John was something that he didn't completely see himself, and that was, his potential to be an All-American. And John was a one-time state champ, had him and Adam Darengowski, both Darengowski being a lightweight and him being an upper weight, and they became best friends. But in both of those cases, they were late bloomers. I mean, didn't really happen until their senior year at all. And sometimes when that happens, people don't know, is it a fluke? They're not the 2 or 3 time state champions, but in both of them, one placing third in the nation, the other placing fourth. I saw potential, and that's where I spent a lot of time from a coach to student athlete with John, getting him to realize just how good he really could be. And same thing, with Adam. As far as John, I don't know anybody that knows John that doesn't like him. And that's what he brings. And he did that as a graduate assistant. And then he took over the Bucknell program for a few years. And John was my first full-time assistant after 25 years or so at Ryder. And, it was a student and coach relationship. Then it was, kind of a assistant coach relationship. And then it got to be just, colleagues. I mean, he's the associate head coach and he's been the associate head coach. So we're fortunate that we had 2 head coaches for the whole time that John has been here. And, you also know that John is a very loyal person. So that's exactly 100%. And I just had that, I've just made that statement to the administration is that's the greatest thing that they've ever given me, is to name him the head coach of Ryder University. And of course, Nick has also been a tremendous addition, and Nick moves into his position. So this is very strategic in terms of how it happened and when it was going to happen, and there was no set timetable for it. I knew that I would know it when it was there, and John and Nick just complement each other tremendously in strengths, in different areas. So,
how much do you have to put a regulation on how much Nick Bedleon uses his phone? Because, I get this look from my wife all the time, and then I think I am on my phone a lot. Yeah. Nick Bedleon is on his phone more than anybody I've ever seen.
Well, Nick is from that generation of being on the phone nonstop and constantly and so on. So, I have to ask him to, put it away sometimes if we're going to have a serious talk during a meeting or something. Because and it's not just Nick; it's most of that generation right now. They live and die by their phone.
Well, going into let's talk about the standing 39 years, 442 wins. You came in this year with 429, a solid 13-1 dual meet record, ranked for a short time this season. But it seems like you've always got depth, even though when guys get hurt, you got a guy to back him up. And they may not be like as talented as the starter, but you don't typically forfeit many weights, and you've always, I mean, even if you've got to bump a guy up 2 weights, you're putting a guy. I think Jimmy Morris wrestled like 19 weights for you during his career there. But when you recruit a team and build a team and try to get depth at a school like Ryder, is your focus saying, okay, we need to get this many guys to have a competitive dual meet team, or we need to have this many guys so we can score top 20 at nationals?
Well, first and foremost, I don't like forfeits, and that's one of the reasons why you'll see sometimes people bump up a weight or so on. I just don't think it's good for the sport. And if there's anything, and that's something that, I've worked together with John and now Nick, if there's any way, I don't want to forfeit. I just don't think it's a good thing for the sport. And, we've all been there where you don't have any option whatsoever. So, I'm not knocking anybody else or any other situation, but if it's within our power at Ryder, we're not forfeiting the weight. Okay. And, and I think John's done a great job, particularly in the last, 10 years of making sure that we have some situations with solid backups that are ready to go. And, that's just my philosophy on it. If we can avoid it, we are going to avoid it at all costs.
Now, speaking of dual meets, one of the signature years in the program was 1997. You had 3 All-Americans at the tournament, ranked in the top 10 in the dual meet rankings, second at the Virginia Duels, behind Edinburgh, which is now a conference rival. What was special about that team?
Stubborn. They just, that was a really stubborn team that I really, really admired and respected. I had Dan Mayo was with us at that time too, and certainly Dan brought a lot of really aggressive training and so on, into the program. The thing that really strikes me is, I sit back and I look at that team, or even this year's team amazed me. They took this on as a project, to get at least 11 wins, and they ended up getting 13. But back to the 97 team, we had a lot of overachievers on that team that beat major people, throughout the year. And they were extremely stubborn. They held each other accountable a whole lot. So those are the 2 things, that I remember about those teams.
And you talk about this year's team coming together to try to get you that 11 wins. So they were aware of the historical significance of your record. And what do you say to the youth these days who, a lot of people may not even go beyond Cale Sanderson. They may not even know that Pat Smith was a 4-time national champ, the first one to do it. I mean, how do you try to educate your athletes on the history of the sport of wrestling, and what made you think these kids understand, like, this is special for Coach Taylor? We need to get him to this benchmark.
Well, this is a special group of kids, and the coaches kind of put the challenge out there at the beginning of the year, and the wrestlers kind of took on that challenge and said, we need to get this done, and it's just out of I have tremendous respect for them. They have respect for me. It was something, that, they wanted to have a good team and challenge the 97 team, and they still want to challenge the 97 team. We're not done yet. They kind of take that on personal as well. It's just been a blessing to watch them and to see a group of people that just, they wanted to win a lot of meets, to get this piece of the puzzle in terms of that number. And as I said, had Jay not stepped down, we wouldn't be talking about this. But they took it on. They took it on more than me at the beginning of the year. I wasn't that focused on it, and the coaches challenged them, and they said, yeah, we're going to do it. And they did it. So very proud of them.
Yeah, and that sits you behind Dale Thomas and Harold Nichols, two names that pretty much everybody in the sport of wrestling should know who they are. And what's it mean to be in that rare air? It's Dale Thomas, it's Harold Nichols, it's you, it's Jay Robinson, Bobby Douglas.
It means a lot to me personally because I coached. The only one I don't know, and I have to think about this, I would actually have to go back. I remember Harold Nichols, and I may have even coached when he was there for a year or two. He retired, if it was probably only a year. I remember Dale Thomas because he would come through. He would come east, and it seemed he was out here for 3 weeks at a time, wrestling in a lot of quads and stuff. So he built a heck of a thing. Now, there wasn't a limit on 16 dates at that time. I think there either wasn't a limit or it was a 21, at that early time before they switched it to 16 dates. But to be mentioned, with Dale Thomas, Harold Nichols, Jay Robinson, Bobby Douglas, I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it's humbling, and it's quite an honor.
When people look at the 39 years, again, 14 conference titles in a number of different conferences, and then they see 39 years, they don't see any finalists, they don't see any team trophies, and people say, well, what's he doing there? I mean, explain, when you say, you've got to understand what you're working with, and not necessarily the limitations, but when you come in and each year, I mean, goals, every coach believes that they've got guys to win certain things, but let's be honest, is a national title like a realistic goal for a school like Ryder? And how have you trained your coaches and wrestlers when you're recruiting, what your goals should be, what are realistic goals, what are attainable goals? I mean, goal setting is a big part in life, and people seem to believe that every coach should strive to win for a national championship. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that each coach should strive to do that. We've had 5 semifinalists. I think 3 of them have lost 3-2. 2 of them were very controversial losses to be in the finals. So it's not like we haven't shown up in the semifinals and been extremely competitive, in those matches. I think there's so many dynamics to that, Jason. It's a hard question to answer, but I will say this. You also have to keep in mind that we are looking at a small private school that costs, probably twice as much as the state schools, and so on and so forth. So it's very tricky in terms of even offering scholarship money. If you're $50,000 and you're offering $25,000, that's still $25,000 difference. A state school may only cost $25,000, or in some cases less. So even if they give them $5,000, so there's a whole lot of things that people, and I understand everyone has opinions. I can respect that, but there's a lot more that goes into behind the scenes and coaching at a small private school and having All-Americans and so on. What I can tell you, we have more All-Americans than any other sport at this school. So in terms of, if you're going to look at wrestling, then I think you got to look at all the other sports, on this team. And then, you got to look at the price of the school. You got to look at how many people graduate. So your sole job is not just to have national champs, and I believe it should be the goal of every Division I coach in the country, and it's been a goal of mine since I've been here. As I said, we're not done yet. All right, I haven't retired yet. We still got this year, so but there's a whole lot that you got to look at, and sometimes people are quick to write someone off or judge them. And I think that's a big, big mistake, because I think we've got some of the greatest young coaches in the country that I've ever seen. I think they need to see that coaches can have a career in the sport. And I think that they need to learn and view that, through the prism of, maybe I can do that. And your role changes, but you don't want to discourage many of these young coaches from making a career at it. I mean, we do it in every other sport, but for some reason in wrestling, every other sport, it's not uncommon for people to have a career. And I think people got to ask themselves that question. As soon as a head coach gets a little older and can't go live, all of a sudden we want to say, well, they're not doing the job. I'll bet you they could have 10 national. Well, hopefully John and Nick will. I'll be their biggest fan. But I think there's a danger in that when media gets too involved, with that. There's 77 schools. Not everyone's going to win every single situation except for the very exceptional 2 or 3 at the top. And even they go up against each other, so somebody's losing. It's just something that I think we would be wise, to look at when we look at other sports, because we seem to mainly do it only in wrestling. And, if you look at those wins are somewhere between 11 or 12 with 16 dates that you're winning. You're producing All-Americans. I don't think that I have to apologize to anybody. And the only time that we weren't at the top or near the top in any of those conference championships, was a year, that my mother died. She was battling leukemia. And, so your mind is a little bit split, for that year and a half or 2 years. But even then, we had good seasons. We had one bad tournament, and then everybody's ready to write you off. So, again, I really don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me whatsoever, what people think of me So what I do get concerned about is, again, and I've been doing this all my life. We've got some great young coaches. I mean, really, really good young coaches. And I think that if they want to make a career at this, we shouldn't be writing them off as soon as they can't wrestle live in a wrestling room anymore. They can still teach, they can still drill, they can still do all of those things. So that's just food for thought. That's all.
One thing, you talked about the competitive nature of what it was like when you first started with Trenton State, Montclair, Glassboro, and then the other teams that were Division I in the region. Now with Rutgers re-energizing their program and moving to the Big Ten, Princeton has kind of reinvested some resources there. They've got some great young coaches there. There's now a more competitive landscape in Division I in New Jersey than there had been the previous 15, 20 years. What's it mean for Ryder to see Rutgers and Princeton excelling the way they are too?
I'm very excited, that both programs are doing a great job. And I mean, when I first got here, Princeton was pretty darn tough too. I mean, they had, Johnny Orr, they had Scepter, and many, great guys. So, but, I think Goodell, Scott's doing a great job at Rutgers, and certainly it makes wrestling better. It makes it better in the state. It makes it, and Coach Ayers and Joey and Gray. I mean, this is good for wrestling. Anytime, that people, and I see passion, I see excitement, and I see all of that. That's good for wrestling. It doesn't matter who it is, and, one of the things when I first got here, I said to our guys, now we weren't winning conference championships at that time, but I looked at Gable. I said, well, he can dominate the nation. Why can't we dominate the conference? So you need people doing well so that everybody gets challenged, and it brings up wrestling. So it's very exciting. And then you look at with Gail Sanderson. This is all good for wrestling,
When we look back at certain performances, you'd said you had the 5 semifinalists. One that sticks out to me the most is probably 2007. Again, I'm coming from the conference, having seen your guys wrestle over the years, and then see Don Fish and Ryan Lang in the semis, and probably one of those 2 controversial matches that you're talking about. You haven't coached a wrestler in the finals in your career. You got a guy that can probably hang this year. Chad Walsh is a returning All-American, has gone toe-to-toe with Isaiah Martinez, but what would it mean to you to get to that raised platform in your final year as a head coach?
I would be more excited for Chad than myself, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not being, I'm not trying to play a game there. Chad's just one of the greatest kids and greatest competitors, and he thinks, at the national level and winning a national championship. So it would be so exciting for me. I would certainly, it'd be great to be in the finals. I'm not saying that, but I'd probably be more excited for him because, he's still got another year. BJ Clagan's got another year, and they're going to be in great hands with John and Nick. So hopefully that'll happen. I know that's certainly Chad's game plan.
One other guy I want to mention because and it's your head athletic trainer, Tim Langille. Been with you for 15, 16 years. And I'll be honest with you, first time I met Tim, we didn't really see eye to eye on a whole lot. And I think that was more because of the he's at Ryder, a little Jersey swagger to him. I'm at Old Dominion with a little you guys suck kind of thing. But, and eventually over the years, I mean, we've become friends over the years. But what's it mean to have a guy on your training staff like that understands wrestling so much that, it's almost like having a third coach in that corner when you need it?
Yeah, no, Tim's a very competitive person, so I like it. I like to have competitive people certainly around me. Besides being a great trainer, he's run 2 NCAA tournaments as the head trainer for, both the Albany NCAA championship and the Philadelphia. He's very, very well organized, knows his craft, and he's received a few warnings even on our on our bench from officials because he does get into. So it's been tremendous, and again, he's the head athletic trainer. So he could be with any sport that he chose to be because it's his program to run in terms of the athletic training program, and he chooses to be with wrestling because he really does love and have a passion for the sport and for our kids. And, so I'm very grateful that we have Tim.
Now, lumping a 39-year coaching career at Rider University is going to make this next question extremely tough to answer, I would assume. But what's the single best moment you've had as a coach there in New Jersey?
You really run the risk of insulting a lot of people, on that if you single out one. What I can tell you is that one of the most critical things to the program that happened was the first All-American, Lou DiSerafino. Critical in the sense that no one could ever say, well, you can't go to Ryder because they don't have any All-Americans and you won't be an All-American. Lou blew that one out of the water, and as I said, he never placed in a high school state championship. So you took a kid that couldn't even place at the state championship, and he went to being third in the nation. So you can build off two things. A, you can come here and be an All-American. B, if you look at the progress that he made in the 2 years, there's a good chance that we can develop you as well. I say we. I didn't have an assistant for the first 5 years. But you have to spend a ton of time, with those individuals that have that ability. So, I've had a lot of, single moments, but I think the one that was critical to the program, because if that doesn't happen, or if it doesn't happen for a long time, then it gets even, it gets even harder to sell your program. So I think that one was critical to get us jump started, and, then many more followed after that.
All right, Coach, and you had alluded to Jay Robinson a couple times during this interview, and you're in that group of 5 with him as the top 5 winningest D1 coaches ever. The situation less than ideal for him to step away from it after a long tenure, and just explain what your thoughts are on Jay Rob and what he's meant to the sport, and maybe even an opinion on the situation.
Well, first, I have tremendous respect for Jay Robinson, and Jay and I have been in many, many meetings, and Jay and I haven't always agreed on every topic, but the passion that the guy has, I have unbelievable respect for him. And again, I'm not basing that solely on his time at Minnesota. Much of it, I'm basing it on that, because he did things that just amazed me. But he was a very integral part. Also, him and Gable were an unbelievable combination as well. And he certainly was, and having a really good, associate head coach in John, I can look at that on a lesser level, but to have somebody that's loyal, somebody that's going to work that hard. So he impressed me before he took Minnesota, but when he took Minnesota, as I said, and I've really, studied this, the last 16 years, more All-Americans than any coach. I mean, that's pretty amazing stretch of time, producing All-Americans and developing national championship teams at a place that hadn't had it. I think he's one of the best coaches of the sport of wrestling of all time, just based on those two things. As far as the situation, I don't know enough about it, so I won't comment on the kids. On Jay and what went on with the kids and so on and so forth. What I can tell you, and the other thing that always impressed me about Jay, and again, I've been in meetings, I've competed against him, I've watched him in tournaments, I've watched him with his kids. He has a passion for the sports, but he always, I really looked at I look at a lot of coaches, how they treat their kids, how they support their kids. And that's one of the things that, always impressed me with him. You could tell he was really behind his kids.
All right, Coach Taylor, there's a segment on the show. We got short time. It's 10 questions. I'm going to blast them at you in about 90 seconds. I don't want you to think too hard about it. I know you got a lot to do with that photographic memory of yours, but I want the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready for the challenge?
God, I don't make quick decisions, but I'll try.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Question 1, who is your favorite person to coach against?
Hofstra at the beginning of my career.
You win the Olympic gold. What are you having for dinner?
I'm going to Chris Ruth, or whoever that is, because they have the best steaks, fillets.
Who's the best wrestler people don't talk about?
Wow. God, there's a lot of them. I'm going to pass on that one just because there's a lot of great wrestlers that don't get talked a lot about that probably should be.
What's your all-time favorite flavor of Gatorade?
That purple Gatorade.
Favorite video game of all time?
I'm not a video game guy.
Who is your favorite international wrestler to watch?
John Peterson.
What move would you rather have in your arsenal, the John Smith low single or the Jordan Burroughs reshot double?
Oh, if I could, if I could perform them as well as those two, I'd want both. John won 6. These guys are so great. I love Burroughs because he takes his head right through you, and I love John Smith because he doesn't just get in on a low single; he finishes low single. So I got that one as a tie.
Who is one guy from history you would like to wrestle?
Only because he's closer to my age, I'd say Dan Gable.
Who's the funniest kid you've ever had to coach?
There's been a lot of funny guys. I can't name one. I can't.
Well, you've got 39 years of rosters to think through. And question 10.
Yeah.
Where can you find the best slice of pizza in New Jersey?
New Jersey and New York are known for really good pizza. So in New Jersey, Candelas.
Works for me. You're out of it, Coach. Next time I'm in Jersey, I'm going to have to find out where that spot is, because I like a good slice of pie.
Next time you're in Jersey, let me know, and I'll take you down to it. It's not just pizza. They have great Italian food as well.
Well, I'll take you up on that offer next time I'm out there. So, Coach Taylor, any final thoughts about your illustrious 39-year career? The EWLs are coming up. The NCAAs are coming up. And, things to watch for, things that you're happy about with the sport, or something we didn't touch on that you feel it's important for you to say.
No, I'm just excited about this group of kids that we got going to the EWL and then to the NCAAs, and I thank you for all that you do and continue to do for wrestling. I appreciate you calling me, Jason. Thank you.
You are listening to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast with my daddy, Jason Bryant.
I don't know if it's possible for me to get tired of inserting that clip into this show. That is my 4.5-year-old daughter, Lucy, and I wrote it out for her to say a couple weeks ago, and she went right to it, and I felt that, I'm proud that my little preschooler can sit there and read. This child can read. Like, it's to the point now we can't really watch the news a whole lot, because she will sit there and read what's on the screen and be like, what's that? What's that? What's that? We're like, let's just read the news on our phones. Because there's times as parents that you have to explain certain things to your children. Some of those issues in the news we're not ready to explain yet to a 4.5-year-old. And that's not any specific issue entirely, but let's just say that there's in parts of, we live in a big city in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and there's some crime stories we'd rather not have to explain just yet. We've got to understand some rationalization and understand how the mind of a 4.5-year-old works. But she is our oldest, so whatever mistakes we make with her, we will definitely correct with Ruby. Anyway, that's I don't really have a whole lot to add here, but this one really made me pleased to do. I mean, it's been on my list. Gary Taylor, I wanted to get him earlier in the year, but now he finished number 3 all time. They're going into the EWL, which is at Bloomsburg at the time we record this weekend, the first weekend of March 2017. If you're somehow in the millennia out there in the light years on one of those new 7 planets they found, that'd be interesting. You're listening to, it's like I don't know, single female lawyer. Kind of from the, for those of you Futurama fans out there, I actually got a note from one of our listeners the other day, and it was like, yeah, man, appreciate your bad movie lines just flying over the top of people. Yep, they definitely fly over the top. Some people, like, throw a Better Off Dead reference out there. It's the 40th anniversary of Slapshot. My buddy Charlie and I went to the Minnesota Wild LA Kings game the other night. And I was wearing a Slapshot jersey. Well, not the Slapshot. I was wearing the Charlestown Chiefs jersey. I am a hockey fan. Here's the thing. I'm a hockey fan, but I don't have a favorite team, if that makes any sense. Because you grow up in southeastern Virginia, you had the Hampton Roads Admirals. Then they became the Norfolk Admirals. I actually interned. I was a broadcast intern with the Admirals in 1997-98, the year they won the Kelly Cup. They entered the tournament as the 16 seed, the last playoff team in. I thought my internship was over when we left Scope. Tom Grace was then the broadcaster. He went on to work with the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Penguins. I'm not sure where he's at. I think he might have ended up with the Tampa Bay Lightning last time I looked him up. But so I thought I was saying bye, and the next thing you know, we got some playoff series. It's the 16 seed making the run through the Eastern Conference, or whatever the conferences were back then. I know I didn't get a ring as an intern. But that was my world of minor league hockey. So really grew up watching the Admirals at Scope, and then Slapshot is a classic. I mean, let's just say I've thrown out some drinking games to you guys in the past when I was in college. There is just the Slapshot drinking game. Every time there's an Effenheimer dropped, you will be just plastered probably by about 40 minutes. Although with the Nationals coming up to St. Louis this year too, the early sessions where they don't have anybody sing. I know Jaden Cox's mom is sang the national anthem. And they had that awesome dude from the Navy. You expect to hear those two, I think, in St. Louis, but they open up the day with the organ, like from the St. Louis Blues. And every time I hear the anthem played with that organ style, I'll be standing there in St. Louis. It'll be like that line where the Hanson brothers are screaming at the referee as their faces are all bloody. And it's like, I'm listening to this. I don't know. I wish I could. I don't want to say it and bleep it out. That's just more work. And I can't I can't do that on Gary Taylor's show, man. I'm talking about hockey. But anyway, I don't know if the North Stars were still the North Stars. Like if the Minnesota Wild were the Minnesota North Stars, I could probably get behind it. Just the Wild with the Man Bear Pig logo, and it's a cool. The X is the best place in the country to watch a hockey game. The Excel Center in St. Paul. Yes, the Minnesota Wild play in St. Paul. They do not play in Minneapolis. So, and that's also where the Minnesota State High School Wrestling Tournament will be. I will not be there. I will be at the NAIA Championships this weekend. And even if I was there, actually, I wouldn't be. Because get this, the Minnesota State High School League denied my media credential request. Yeah. So I'm working on getting a photographer, David Peterson, who, first of all, they denied Minnesota USA Wrestling's request as a media outlet. They said they don't produce enough original content or something. So then I got credentialed last year. So then I go through the application process because, if Peterson's there, I'm going to use him. I'm going to use some photos or something, even if I'm not there. Well, that's denied. And basically the word is coming back is like, all the stuff on your website is basically college, and there's only a link to the guillotine. No, there's not just a link to the guillotine. If said individual, who shall remain nameless, a former newspaper writer, go figure. I'm amazed that a former newspaper writer is being this stringent when it comes to. I've been credentialed as a journalist for 2 Olympic Games. I actually, before I got the announcing gig, I made sure I got a media credential for the Olympics. I was one of very few people in this country as a media outlet to get a credential for wrestling. I got one. This is before I even got the announcing gig. So accredited for 2 Olympic Games as a journalist, but not accredited for the Minnesota State High School League tournament. Man, how short-sighted are you? When I thought the VHSL was bad. And here's the thing. I can't really fight this too much because I'm not going to be there. I'm going to the NAIAs. But the fact is, okay, fine. You don't want any reference to college or anything. Okay, it's all college stuff. So the fact that Cale Sanderson was on the program last year means nothing because he's a college coach. The Olympic gold medalist, the Olympic champion from 2004 on a show at the Minnesota State High School League tournament, interviewing Nate Angle, Mark Harwood, college coaches about why they're recruiting the state of Minnesota, why these kids make this one of the best tournaments in the country. No, I have too much college coverage on my page, so they don't want me. So next year, if they schedule this thing and I can go back to the Minnesota State High School League, I'm going to freaking fight this one tooth and nail because it is ridiculous. I've been a journalist for 20 years. And the coordinator came out of a print background. I came out of a print background. Okay. I was the desk jockey. I cover, I've done this all. I've been a professional before I started my own business. So I just think it's ridiculous. And then, some people will wield the power and they will not let you in, even though anyway, again, this is Gary Taylor's show and I'm going off on the rails here. But yeah, so just an interesting FYI. If I were to be at the Minnesota State tournament, which is where I got to the hockey, man, that's a weird way how I got here. But man, I really need to get my head examined. But maybe the MSHSL does need to as well. But that's all I got. I'm going to end on that note because ain't nobody got time for that. Except you know what? I really should find some way to weave that into the show. But it might be lost on some of you folks who aren't down with the ain't nobody got time for that meme from like 4 years. It's old. It's I'd be way behind the curve on this. So my unfunny jokes, my bad pop culture references, and slapshot movie references. That's how this one's going to end. If you're in Topeka, check it out. The Kansas Expo Center. Dort Mayab and I will be announcing the 61st or 60th. Yeah, I have to look at the book. Alan Grossbach at the NAIA. He sent me a ton of stuff. I'm ready to go. But I'm on the microphone with Dort Mayab at the Kansas Expo Center in Topeka. Come check it out. Jerry Briscoe, we're gonna have steak dinner. Yep, we're gonna do it. I know you're listening, and I thank you for listening and spending your time with me as you head to your conference qualifiers and you do everything. Remember, hit that preview guide up. MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide17. Use that promo code podcast. Let me know you're listening. Save yourself some money. Win yourself some money, perhaps, depending on what you do with it. I do not endorse any illegal wagering on athletics of the college size, but, but do whatever you want once you buy it. That's not on me. Or the university. I don't advise it if you're a University of Richmond baseball player. Ooh, too soon? Anyway, thank you for spending your time with me because you've always got time for a short time, unless you're the Minnesota State High School League.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.